I'm here today with Jocelyn Ring, and Jocelyn is going to share a little bit about her experience with the, you know, Horse Medicine Leadership Academy training program that she did with us last year, to be able to kind of speak to the experience and the trainings about what she got from it. So Jocelyn, like what I was, just speaking to Jocelyn, why don't you talk a little bit about where you kind of found me potentially, that whole journey, and what spoke to you about stepping in and doing this training over, some other ones that had popped up before you. Yeah.
So I had been kind of bouncing around different business groups in Facebook, and I had mentioned how I was trying to marry a life of horse work with what I'm doing now, and how it didn't quite make any sense. And somebody said, "Oh, you need to be following this woman, Hillary. She's telling her story on Facebook, and it's pretty amazing what she does." And then so I started following you on Facebook, and this was back at the end of 2015. Yeah. And then you were doing a lot of calls at that time. So you had kind of just a 2-hour call where you talked about your journey and the structure of your work. And then at the end, you had an opportunity for people to connect with you if they wanted to. So I took you up on that and just talked about where I was, and you gave me a lot of great resources to explore some of the horse work. So that was the end of 2015. So I did that, and I found that there were lots of people that did this all over the place, and so I followed them. And then in 2016, you had an opportunity for a 6-month container of one-to-one work, and including the horses. And so my next step was to do that because I was feeling confused and unclear about my direction, which when I came to spend time with you, figured out that I was not confused. I just needed somebody to help pull it out and pull it together. And so in that 6-month container, I got very clear on my business and the new direction, and I decided that it was time to incorporate the horse work. So it was very natural, since I had already worked with you and, really loved your coaching style and got so much out of it, to jump into the Horse Medicine Leadership Academy for training around the facilitation.
And I think what's really cool about your journey, and I get this a lot, like people look at my setup and I have this 80 acres and 21 horses, and they're like, well, I don't have that, so I can't do it. Not true. I definitely didn't start that. So share a little bit about where you were when you started the program. Like, did you have horses and a place
no. So I was a lifelong equestrian and grew up around them and owned horses. And at the time, that was something that was a block for me, because I live in a very urban area and I don't have a horse. I didn't even have access to horses at the time, being in a new city and not really having facilities. And so, I sat with, well, I could do the training now and figure it out later. I can wait till everything's perfect, but you never know when that's going to be. So I jumped in and I did the training, and I found that if, I could appreciate the setup that you have, and I opened myself up to any possibility of what this could look like. So I started telling people, like, this is the training that I'm going through, and reached out to old horse people, a farm that I had taught at nearby, and they said, you can absolutely come, spend time with our horses. And so for the learning portion of being able to just connect with and sit with the horses, I had access to that. And then just a weird kind of coincidence, I had to get new photos taken for new branding that I was doing. And I went back to my photographer, who's from New Jersey. I'm currently in South Carolina. And I said, I really don't care about the professional headshots, but I would love to do some pictures at a farm. And she said, I have a friend with a farm. And I told her about all this work. And so I have farms here in South Carolina that I can do the work out of, and up in New Jersey that I can do the work out of. So if you just trust it, the horses show up. You don't need your own space.
Yes. Yeah. And I often share with people too, like, they see the tail end of my journey, but when I started, I didn't have my own facility. and I had one horse who I couldn't really use because he was a rescue and he wasn't at that point where I could really expose him to people. So I had to work out of other facilities. Yeah, but I jumped into my training and I didn't have a horse or a place, but I was like, this path is calling to me, so it's going to happen.
Yes.
Yes. So kind of, again, I know there's tons of different trainings out there where people could do, can do this work. I want to speak a little bit about like what you really appreciated with our program and, the experience of going through it and like what you really got, from doing that journey with us.
Just from my past experience with horses, I know that there's a depth to the relationship and that you need to spend time in the relationship with horses, but just learning a practice, right? So there were a lot of programs. There's one that's 50 miles from where I live that could have been very easy to do. You do it in a weekend and you're certified. And that to me, it didn't feel right because there's just so much to this work. And I think that the way that this program was spread out over a year. So we had a component of in person where we came to your place, and then we had work to do at home, building relationships with our own horses. And then we had room to learn stuff, ask questions, and build a really solid foundation before we ever took this out into the world. And I think the other thing that I liked is we didn't have to, there's a foundation of learning and there were exercises and all that stuff, but it's not like there's a very hard and fast agenda that we have to follow when we do this work. Like you've given us all the tools and then we can take our lens on it or something that we want to bring to the work and get that out there. So it's not like, sometimes when you learn from someone, they expect you to do everything exactly the way that they do it. But you support us bringing this work out into the world, so it felt much more abundant than some other spaces as well, and not so competitive. Like when another compelling piece of the program is that you want us to go out and do this work. So it's not like I certify X number of people a year and I don't care what they do. You want to make sure that we go out and do it.
Thank you for that. And what are you doing with the work now? Like where, it's been how long, since, what's in development for you that you're really excited about?
So I'm super excited because this is something that, and I really believe that your soul knows the work that you're meant to do. And I remember back in 2011, 2012, when I was bringing together my branding and my facilitation practice, I was sitting at a whiteboard and I was in a mastermind and I was trying to explain to everybody that horses need to be a part of my work and a part of my brand. And there was nothing, there was no response. And I was in tears because I knew that somewhere this was all supposed to come together. And so what I found for me with the horse work is that using the horses to help people see who they really are and anchor into an authenticity so that they can build a really strong and compelling brand just amplifies the work that I already do. So I've got some workshops in process where I can introduce this to people. Also through talking about the work, I've had interest from my corporate clients that want to do this experience. So I'm actually out there doing the work already.
Yeah, which is exciting. So yeah, just to, because I know like there's always like a very, I think in our group, so Jocelyn mentioned she does her branding, which, I think is much deeper than just that. And we had another woman who works in corporate, does coaching as well. Another one who leadership coaching, and then another, woman who wants to work with community women and horsemanship. So it's very interesting. I think what's really cool about the program is also being able to blend it in however people are called to work with clients, and so I think what's really interesting about you is you don't have like a typical of a coaching practice, so to say, or a counseling practice. You're able to, I think, blend it into something that's really unique service that you do for people. So, and, you know, for people that are looking at the video, obviously behind Jocelyn, is her, this is her thing that she does with her work and with her branding. So do you want to, you know, share a little bit about you and who you are and, you know, what you're doing? Just because I think it's very interesting. It's maybe not like a typical, you know, for people that are doing this work, it's not necessarily the typical, you know, pathway.
Yeah, so I came out of a corporate background. I started in finance and then quickly learned that that was not for me, and earned an MBA and really fell in love with strategy and branding, and not like the glossy veneer of logos and websites and graphic design, but the really deep strategic work to figure out what makes you unique and who you want to serve, and tapping into your purpose and amplifying that into a brand. So I do this work with organizations and with individuals. And I also decided, I think this also came out of our work, right? So I was really, back in 2016, when I was feeling confused and spread out and messed up, I had done so much work and served a lot of different clients, and I was really tired of the word branding and how people were thinking that it was just all the superficial stuff. And so I help companies build platforms that become legacies. So people that are in for the long game, and people that really want to be known for something and are committed to building something bigger than themselves. And the horses really help you tap into that kind of depth.
Yeah.
And stand in it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's good. But I think again, I think the way you blend it and what you do is a little bit unique even to, you know, potentially who gets called to this work. And that's where I think it's really neat to kind of hear what you're up to, because I think there's an assumption sometimes of where the horses blend and what we do with people, but really the sky's the limit. I think you know, having the horses be a part of whatever it is, again, you don't have to have a coaching practice or be from a counseling perspective. I think that there's lots of opportunity to weave horses in what we do with people. And, you know, you're an example of that. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, there are endless possibilities and layers to the work.
Yeah, totally. So, and if somebody like is now reading a page, or I'm sharing about what this program is about, and they're thinking about it, what would you say to somebody that's kind of feeling drawn to stepping in and partnering with myself and our herd here, and the journey of it?
I would say that if you're feeling drawn in, even if you can't see how this is going to unfold in the future, but you just feel very drawn and very strong about the program, and even if you don't have any horses, and again, like you don't know how you're going to tie this in or what it looks like, I would say the clarity comes once you start the work.
Yeah. And then, you know, the program's pretty awesome, right?
The program, it is awesome. I mean, I could have gone anywhere, and I'm somebody who does more than enough research before I'm trying to decide what to do. And I mean, I think it speaks volumes that, you know, I did do the one-to-one work with you so I mean, I've been a client for 3 years now, you know, and I think almost anything that you offer, I immediately buy. Because it is awesome. The experience of being there on the ranch is awesome. The support you get in between the calls. And I just think that your approach to the work is incredibly unique.
Thank you. Yeah. And, you know, I'll speak a little bit to that. And then of course, you know, for people, but I think what's important for us in this program, and I think like Jocelyn spoke to, is what's different about it is you're getting the facilitation training, but you're also getting support in what does it look like for you to do the work. And so when you're done the program, it's not that you're trying to figure that out of like, what's my vision and how am I going to walk this work out and who am I going to work with? It's really blended, and you is bringing those pieces together so that it feels very tangible and you have something by the end of it that you're doing and you're stepping into. And it's not just it's just not, I don't want it to just be a training program people do to connect more deeply with horses. It's really like, what do you do with work and how can we support you in actually doing it. So it's sort of a blend of that mentorship plus, you know, giving you the facilitation and skill sets of understanding, you know, how
Yeah,
to
because I
facilitate.
mean, some of us were doing the work during the program because if there was an opportunity that came up, we were able to come to you and say, somebody is interested in doing this work and this is something that I would really love to do. And you supported us and helped us put together messaging and agendas and pricing and all of that stuff. So yeah, the support was tremendous.
Yeah, cool. So thank you for doing this quick little testimonial for us. And, you know, for people who are interested in Explore, and then also I'm sure, you know, if you want to talk to potentially Jocelyn personally about her experience and stuff, I know she's
Yeah,
putting
I'd
on a
be
strong.
happy to do that. And I will highly
Yeah,
recommend it because it's been
yeah,
life changing.
yeah. And then otherwise you can, you know, touch in with me and talk about, you know, different options of stepping into doing some training with us. So thank you for your time today, Jocelyn.
You're welcome.
And people that are watching it, you will be given a link or a connection point of how to get in touch with us, and then we'll go from there.
Mm-hmm.